Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully, this will be a little more low key than the what we just did.
Everyone's audio sounds excellent.
And there's
Right.
there's gonna be no airplanes taking off in the middle, whatever that was. I think it was just Greenfield finally ascending.
Yeah, everyone looks fully materialized into this reality, and audio is good, so we're good to go.
Yeah. So we are doing, I believe, what is going to be the final, unless I can ever get PD Newman on one of these. We'll see. But we're doing the final stream to advertise, promote, pimp, whatever you want to call it, the Strange Realities Conference coming up October 15th through the 17th in Nashville, Tennessee, and online. And we are with two of the gentlemen that are going to start us off on Friday evening, the 15th. And that's Tim Benall and Aaron Gulyas.
Hey.
All right. And we were just on the Saucer Life not that long ago.
Yeah, last week. Yeah.
It was quite an honor.
It's only the second time I've ever had anybody on the show. So, well, besides, okay, it's like the fifth time. But aside from my rotating cast of usual
associates,
people. So interview sort of style. So yeah, perfectly happy to do that. It's fun.
Oh yeah, the first one was the one you talked about, Dark Skies.
Yeah, there's a guy who wrote a book about dark skies, which one time when I wasn't thinking too clearly and at a low point in my life, I thought about doing. But this guy had done it. So it's like, you whenever somebody writes a book that you're like, if somebody doesn't write a book about this, I'm going to have to, and then they write it, so you don't have to. That's a great moment. So you want to talk to them, and it's an interesting topic, and it fit right in to the show. And he asked very politely, which nobody else who's ever asked for a book interview has ever done. It's all cookie cutter. This guy actually knew that I didn't do interviews, but asked very nicely, and I was like, well, you seem like a nice young man. I will allow you on my show. So, yeah. So, yeah.
It's not like the ones you got for the guy that was like the harbinger of Maitreya, which you would always get those radio.
Yeah.
You ever get those?
I'm not going to say I'm not
Daniel
going to say his
Sims.
Not him. I'm not going to say the name of the person who would email me because nobody say his name, because he's one of those people who, much like the representative of the one-armed man in Switzerland, sort of pops up and acts very litigious, despite the fact that he's just basically repping a flying saucer. So not a big interview guy. The new show, the Great Lakes Lore Show we're doing, I've got a co-host, which is or she's got a co-host. I'm happy to take as much of a back seat as my inability to shut up allows me. But so that's interesting, because it's interesting playing nice with others sometimes. Like Benall.
Tell us a little bit about that, Aaron.
So
you've started a whole new podcast now.
Yeah, it's the second podcast in the Chizo Media, the Chizo Media Empire. It's a spin-off, kind of, and basically, Samantha and I are both historians by training and occupation. I teach, and she's a museum director, public historian, archives type of person. And what we're basically doing is looking at weird history, paranormal stuff in the Great Lakes region, just to narrow it down and make it a little distinct. We're sort of looking at that from the perspective of historians. How do historians do it? How do historians look at primary sources and sort of get a story from that? And how does that compare to what the sort of popular image fringe may be? So yeah, that's what we're doing. And we've done 2 episodes so far. One is about a murder, a multiple murder out in West Michigan, in Samantha's hometown, back in the 1920s. And the second one that came out yesterday is about the Mad Gasser of Mattoon in Illinois. So, which is really interesting story, and has had a lot of nonsense grow up around it over the years. And we try to cut through some of the nonsense. It probably wasn't a man in black. Mr. Redfern. So, because not everything's a Man in Black, Mr. Redfern. So it's fun to sort of, look at these things affectionately, but also kind of critically, kind of what I do in the Saucer Life, but with, 97% fewer UFOs, which is never a bad thing.
But that's a good 3% though.
Yeah, well, if I can talk Sam into it, yeah, I'm sort of angling for a couple, just a little bit of flying saucer stuff, just a
cool.
little.
Are you going to try to cover the swamp gas one in Michigan?
See, that would be. I want to sort of weasel that one in there, and mystery airships over Illinois back in the 1890s. So I think those would be fun. But and there was a weird sort of Thomas Mantell-like deal over Lake Superior back in the 1950s where a plane disappeared chasing a UFO. So that's a much less known. It's like not too far from Sault Ste. Marie. So that's a lesser known UFO airplane thing.
What about like some of the ghost ship stuff on the Great Lakes?
Yeah, we're going to do some ghost ship stuff. We're going to do some lake monster stuff. You got to do Dogman there in Michigan and Wisconsin and the UP. We are absolutely not going to do any Lake Michigan Mothman stuff. I've put a moratorium on fake Mothman.
Nice. Yeah.
So none of that. Hey, if you want to have yourself a winged humanoid, knock yourself out, but don't call him Mothman.
That's right.
My boy down in West Virginia, right? So let an Ohio Valley podcast worry about that one.
That makes complete and total sense.
Thank you.
I know some geography too.
Just call them winged humanoids.
Winged humanoid. That's right.
Thank you.
By the way,
only one Mothman. Can we just establish there's only one Mothman?
There can only be one.
Yes.
Everything else is just a dollar store version.
By the way, whatever happened to Dark Skies?
Dark Skies got canceled at the end of the first season. Actually, the order to cancel it came through partway through, and it's one of those things where NBC was kind of jerking it around in the scheduling. It was a Saturday night show, which is not like Saturday prime time is awful because it keeps getting preempted for every sport NBC shows on set. So I think at the time college football was really sort of messing up the Dark Skies scheduling, and so it could never really build the audience it needed, and so it got canceled, and they compressed like 5 years of storyline development into the last half of the season, basically, which was weird. Which was at that point that I stopped watching back in '97. And all respect to Matthew Kressel, who wrote the book about it. I don't think it was a very good show. I think it might have been in a world where it came before the X-Files. It might have been the X-Files, but it came after the X-Files, so it sort of looked like, look at NBC trying to do the X-Files. What a bunch of this is in like 96, 97 when X-Files was like king.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not doing a paranormal show about like literally like young government people. One of them kind of reddish blonde haired and the other dark haired. I don't care if you said it in the 1960s. It's not going to fly. It's going to look like, and I believe like the creators of it said, well, we really weren't thinking about the X-Files when we created it. Well, maybe, but NBC was thinking about the X-Files when they put it on the schedule.
Yeah. Everybody watching at home was too.
And exactly. So, yeah.
Are you sure that MGA-12 didn't get it canceled?
I do like the fact they had Art Bell as a member of MJ-12. Or no, he was.
He was on the show. Yeah,
he was on the show. He was William S. Pelly, the head of CBS. That's who he played. Which was fun. And I think they sort of implied that he was part of the Dark Cabal, things like that. So, it was. There were a lot of neat little touches in the show. I think when they tried to compress everything into the last part of the season, it kind of fell apart. But it did give us Jerry Ryan on national television for the first time, leading to 7 of 9, which was the only interesting thing on Voyager in the whole 7 years. And not for any sort of lascivious reason. It's just she wasn't a character who bored me to death. like everybody else. Sorry, guys, I'm not gonna turn this into our Star Trek thing like the last time I was on. So, but yeah,
we should do a whole show on Star Trek and on Gene. Why Aaron does not like Gene Roddenberry.
Wow.
Gosh, it would do. It's like the closest approximation to actually living with me. We could have my wife on.
Make
to
a
talk
whole
about
podcast out of it.
Yeah, have my wife on to talk about why I don't like Gene Roddenberry. She's probably heard me yell about it enough.
It'll get heated.
I'm a delight.
And also to ask, what are you going to be presenting at Strange Realities?
Yeah, I'm going to be talking about saucer felons. I've got a couple of guys. And I say that deliberately. They're not just people; they are male, and they are not just UFO carnies. They're not just UFO shady people who might not be telling the truth about their alien encounters. They're people who actually were convicted of crimes in courts related to their UFO claims, or how they used their UFO claims to defraud people out of money in financial swindles. One of the people is Reinhold Schmidt, who we did an episode about, probably a couple years ago now. And the other is, this is an exclusive scoop here. The other is named Bernie. His last name is Bernie. And I first heard about him reading Go Rightly and Bishop's book, A is for Adamski. And Jack Brewer, in his new book, Wayward Sons, goes into Bernie's past as well. He's got a lifelong sort of love affair with crime. So, and so like most as did Reinhold Schmidt. So like most swindlers, most saucer swindlers. Oh, that would have been better than saucer felons. Dang it. They sort of just took their bag of grifter tricks and applied it to flying saucers, rather than be flying saucer people who decided to turn to a life of crime. So we'll talk about those two. I'll probably mention a few other people, but I was looking at the time, and I was looking at the stories of Schmidt and Bernie, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go out and find a half dozen people and end up, not being able to talk about 4 of them. So we're going to concentrate on those two characters, and it should be fun. And Friday's lineup is looking like a hell of a good time. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, we've got you on, Aaron, at 7:35 to 8:35.
Yeah,
on Friday the 15th, and Tim, you are starting us off.
I'm kicking it off, baby.
You're kicking the whole thing off.
That's right.
5:15 to 6:15 on. There's a lot of 15s here on October 15th.
I like it.
Tim, what are you going to be talking about?
Oh boy.
Well,
it's evolving as I kind of delve into this. I'm kind of conjuring up a whole fresh new set, if you will. I think of this as stand-up comedy almost, where it's I've done the flat earth thing a million times now at different events. So it's I need to come up with a new set. So originally, when we had talked about this, about Strange Realities 2021, Nashville, it was the idea was kind of when prophecies succeed. And it was this idea of what happens when a mystery is solved within these communities. And then that's kind of still the core of what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to probably spend most of my time talking about that. But I'm also going to kind of explore the idea of okay, because as I was thinking more about it, it was okay, I can only really come up with 2 giant mysteries that have been solved off the top of my head that really kind of are applicable to what I want to get into, which is the fallout in a way. And then it was kind of thinking to myself, why are all these other things so hard to solve? And so I'm going to kind of also go into that a lot too, where it's okay, what are these D.B. Cooper, Amelia Earhart, and Dyatlov Pass? And it's okay, why can't these be solved? And what would it take to solve these mysteries? And the more I kind of thought about it, it was okay, some of these you can probably solve someday. Some of these were still within the realm of possibility. And others, like, I don't want to give up like too much of like what I'm going to be getting into, but like others like DB Cooper, right? There was tons of forensic evidence in the DB Cooper case that they just threw away. Like he was on the airplane smoking butts the whole time. And then the FBI came in and investigated it, like swept up all the cigarettes and threw them in the trash. And it's like, look, dude, if we had those cigarette butts, we would have solved this mystery by now. Like we would know who DB Cooper is if we had those cigarette butts. And so it's that kind of like, I'm going to kind of explore some of those things and sort of how it's really just super hard to like declare any of this stuff solved. Like earlier this year, there was this Dyatlov Pass case where they did like scientific models to show exactly how this avalanche, it's pretty much an airtight explanation, but there's just you cannot definitively ever really say with some of this stuff. So I'm going to kind of explore that and get into like, okay, what mysteries could we expect to see solved someday? And what is probably like impossible to solve. Like, I think at this point, like the Jack the Ripper thing, it's like, there's no way it's gone on this long. There's no way everyone's going to be able to figure out exactly who it was. That one's going to last forever. And I was talking to, we'll see how much I really want to get into it too much at the event, but I've been like obsessed with this Gabby Petito case. So I think I may get into that a little bit because it's kind of like a rare instance where you can see a mystery from birth to wherever it is now, wherever it is when I'm going to get to Nashville. And it's like, I've been following this case really closely all along. And you can kind of see that this is taking on your classic sort of mystery where it's like, it's like, we know what happened to poor Gabby Petito. That's terrible. It's like, where is this guy that just took off? We could spend the next 10, 15 years trying to find this dude. And it's going to be the same situation where people are going to have all these theories about where he is and what he did. And it's going to play out exactly like all these mysteries do. If they find this guy, then it's going to be like a rush to find out answers and everything like that. So I don't want to get too deeply into that, but that's kind of like, that may be a part of the whole presentation. So it's kind of coming together. I've got a lot of ideas about just this sort of thing about like trying to solve mysteries and how difficult it really is. And then what happens with the rare instances when it does get solved, you know? So that's kind of where we're at. I'm going to really refine this and put it all together this weekend, but I have a pretty good idea of, of what I'll be getting into. And people I've talked to seem to like the idea a lot. So we'll see if I can do it justice. But to me, it's like I spent all my days working, looking at these. I have like sort of a set list of stuff that I go down every day when I'm looking for stories for Coast to Coast. So it's like, obviously UFOs, aliens, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, ghosts, haunted. That's mysteries. That's kind of like my main thing. But then you go into like the lower tier of stuff, and it's like every day I'm like DB Cooper, Amelia Earhart, Dyatlov Pass, Voynich manuscript. Like what are these? And I always Amber Room. That's another one that's like the Amber Room. Every year with these stories, you get at least one story where someone thinks they figured it out. Someone thinks they've solved the mystery, and it never really pans out. So we'll get into some of that stuff, too, where it's like it's an annual occurrence. You could put money on it. Every year, someone's going to come out and go, I solved the Voynich manuscript. It's like, why isn't this solved yet? What is it going to take to solve the Voynich manuscript? How will we know that this is actually an open and shut case? So it's kind of, I'm going to get into sort of these big tentpole mysteries. And sort of maybe explore like, okay, what would it take to really say this is solved? Because I think a lot of them are like really difficult to definitively close the book on, So that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like that's a little bit vague, but I think people can get kind of an idea where I'm going with it. And it's, I think it's going to be a lot of like sort of just based on my style. It's going to be really like freestyle sort of thing where, I'll sort of just throw caution in the wind, and I'm not going to have like a really point by point like presentation. It's going to be more like, all right, in my notes, it'll just be like Dyatlov Pass. Now talk about that. So that'll be kind of my thing. So my main concern, the big stressor as I go into the weekend to put it all together is like, just time it out, because I'm used to like my podcast where it's like, all right, I'm just going to talk for as long as I want, and as long as the guest will stick around. So it's like, all right, that's my big thing. It's like, all right, I got to sit down and do an hour and actually time this thing out and see what I can keep and see what I can cut. But that's sort of the idea. The big mysteries, can they be solved? If not, why not? If so, how? And then what happens when these mysteries are solved? I don't know. I think we talked about this last time I was on with you guys, but it's like, you don't want to be the guy that fucking shoots Bigfoot. I'm sorry, but it sounds cool or whatever, but you really don't, because everything you've ever done in your life is up for grabs. Like, they will dig through your entire life. Not in the media necessarily, but like people on Reddit. like you are screwed, dude. You are so screwed. It'll be like, I just found all the property records for Adam Sane, the guy that shot Bigfoot. Look at this. Why was he living in Poughkeepsie in 1983? We need to know more about that. Like, no, you don't. So that's kind of my thing with that, and you almost don't want to be that person, because you're just in the spotlight right away. And I think there's a thing too with the internet that there's like a joke about it. I don't have
you got me, Tim. I've got his head right here.
There you go. But like, there's a joke about it. But like, everybody
mystery solved.
Everybody who's like a hero on the internet within like 2 weeks becomes like vilified, because then they're like, oh, we found out he did something horrible back like 20 years ago, and it's like, oh shit, So yeah, I don't think you necessarily want to be the person that takes down the Bigfoot, especially because like, you're like, oh, this is awesome. I captured a Bigfoot. It's like, great. Now that I can't leave my house because the media is camped out in front of my house. They want to talk to me 24/7. This is crazy. This is wild,
So that kind of brings me to thinking about people that don't want a mystery solved, or when a mystery is solved, they're still in denial about it.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to get into that pretty deep in the presentation, especially with the Forest Fen treasure, because the reaction of the people to the Forest Fen treasure being found is like hilarious and sad at the same time. Like, it's turned into like, okay, we're not going to research the Forest Fen treasure now. We're going to research everything this guy who found the treasure has said so far. And there are like spreadsheets of every interview this guy ever did, with like each little detail on each line, where it's like, okay, then he said this, then he said that, and they study this and they look at it and they try to find inconsistencies, and they say, oh, well, in this interview he did for Esquire, he said this, but then in the other interview he did 6 weeks later, he said it was northwest, but prior he said it was just north. What do you think he's trying to say there? And it's like, these people like, just give it up, dude. The guy found the treasure, but there's a lot to say about that case, because it's like, he found the treasure and then no one knows where the fuck it is. It's the most I think that's kind of the key too that I'm going to talk about, is like, for as much as you may want to know the answer, like, the answer is like fucking always wicked unsatisfying. It's super, super unsatisfying. You're not going to find out. These people who are into this stuff, and I mean, I'm into all this stuff, so I'm not like crapping on most folks, but like the people who are really invested in this stuff, some of them like really focus on these really, really fine details. And it's like, when the mystery gets solved, you don't get an answer to this tiny aspect of the case that you yourself, guy, have spent 6 months to a year to 6 years studying. Like, we're going to talk about like the Golden State Killer, East Area Rapist. And in one instance, police found like a handwritten like note. It was like a homework assignment. So that's a lot of people were like, oh, it's a high school kid. It's a young kid, a college student or something. And I forget the name of it, but it was like, it was like Love's Rapture. It was like some poem or some shit. And people like have spent like years dissecting this poem. What does the poem mean? What's he trying to say? What do you think the real message is in the Love's Rapture poem? And it's like, look, dude, they caught the guy. He pled guilty. He's in jail for life. He's not saying anything. You're never going to know what the Love's Rapture poem means. You will never find out about it. So it's like, I guess in a way, it's almost a cautionary tale for people in the audience, where it's like, try not to invest a whole lot of your life in like a tiny detail of a case, because even if it's solved, you're never going to find out there's a good chance you're not going to find out what your little pet avenue was all about.
People go down these rabbit holes and they get obsessed.
Right.
just some minor minutia. And that kind of reminds me a little bit of like the whole, what was it, the Yorkshire Ripper, where like the guy that was like faking the entire thing, and he sent in this tape, and that sent them like completely on the wrong path. And,
I saw that documentary.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, speaking of this guy whose head I have mounted
Bigfoot,
here, that I killed, you, Tim, got to judge a Bigfoot calling contest in Whitehall, New York.
Yeah. My goal of becoming the paranormal Steve Harvey is starting to really
You need to work on that mustache.
Oh, yeah, that'll be next. Once I start about it, then I'll really know I made it. So, long story short, I was on the show last time. We talked about this. I went up to they call it the Champlain Valley. I don't even know if that's really, but that's what they call it. It's a region of New York. It's the area of New York that's like, Lake Champlain is like in the middle, and then there's two, New York and Vermont, and they're right on the line. And they're pretty much like the same region. Like once you cross over back and forth, it's like the people are all pretty much the same. It's sort of like this Vermontian culture, and so I really fell in love with it up there because I love Vermont, and I love the trip to Ticonderoga. It was so surreal with the Star Trek Museum and everything. And they had told me at the time they were going to do this Bigfoot conference in Whitehall. And so I was like, well, all right, well, I like it up here, so I'm going to come back up and check it out. And no shade on the Champ Day, but the Champ Festival was like this kind of low key affair. It was like maybe like a couple hundred people, and maybe like, I don't know, 24 vendors, and like 5 or so experts and everything. So it was just kind of like a low key. It was nice. It was quaint. I was kind of expecting that with this Whitehall thing, but when I showed up in Whitehall, I was like, holy shit. So I drove up to Vermont, stayed in Vermont, about a half hour away from Whitehall in Rutland, Vermont. And then I took the day and drove over to Whitehall, which is the Bigfoot capital of New York. They have like Bigfoot's their official animal and stuff. So they've really embraced Bigfoot. It's very Mothman festival-y, kind of like Bigfoot's their thing. So when I pulled down the road to where the thing is, I was like, holy shit. And there was just cars, like the whole street was like packed, lined with cars on both sides. You had to park on like the lawn of like the Knights of Columbus or whatever. Like that was, they were like charging you like $5 to park on the lawn there and stuff. It was that huge. And I'm like, holy shit, this is like really big. So, we park, we get out, we just get in there, and it's like, if the other event had like 24 vendors, this had to have, I don't even want to say, like maybe like 60 vendors at least. It was huge. It was massive. It was absolutely massive. They said the last time they held the event, there was like 3,000 people there. And they thought it might have been around that this time. So like this was enormous, and it like stretched for like a quarter of a mile. And like one end was the vendors, and it was like that was a huge, like a football field length thing of just tents and tents and tents of stuff. And then in the middle was this pavilion with all the experts they had brought into town, like Paul Bartholomew was kind of my contact in Whitehall, really sweet dude. Alexander Petikoff, Kenny Irish, a few other folks. And then a huge, like, this line of food trucks with like all kinds of carnival food and fair food. I think I posted pictures online of like, I got a waffle stick that had like banana cream pudding and whipped cream on it. Yeah, it was amazing.
Man. Oh, yeah, man.
And that was like one of like a dozen options. And I'm like, fuck, I wish I could just I could go back and just get like 3 or 4 more of these.
Forget Bigfoot.
Yeah, exactly. And then a beer garden at the end.
Get my ass a funnel cake, man.
Yeah. And like I got there like at 11 o'clock, and I'm like, I knew I was going to judge the thing, and I'm like, man, I don't know. I don't know if I can make it till like 5 o'clock. This is like, but then next thing I knew was like, oh shit, it's 5 o'clock. It was like that. It was that cool. It was just like so much to do. There was a guy running around with like a Muppet, like a Bigfoot Muppet. Like I posted, it was really like weird. He was a nice person, but a strange individual because I took his picture and I'm like, okay, because like, what's your name and stuff? Because so I could credit him if I ran it on coast to coast. He's like, oh, don't even worry about it. It's all good. I'm just a performer or whatever. And it was like,
yeah, he was a fugitive.
Yeah, great. It was like you don't go somewhere with a Muppet and not want to tell people like your name. Like
what about the guy that was dressed up like a 19th century big game hunter?
That was the steampunk Bigfoot hunter. Yes. Yeah, he was cool as hell. He was really cool. Yeah, he was like he's a nurse by day or something, like a medical technician by day, and he had this whole elaborate thing. I interviewed him on Facebook. He took him like months and months and months to put together this whole steampunk thing, and he goes to different events and things, and it's just that's the kind of thing. Like maybe someday down the line, if I could find the right hook, that would be like something interesting to do a presentation. I was like, what motivates these people like to do like I don't know. I don't like the attention, so I wouldn't want to be like that. But there are people that really like going around and being in costume and having people approach them and want to take their picture. And he stayed in character most of the time when people when it was the right time to be in character. Like when I talked to him, he went back to normal. Thank goodness. It wasn't like that one of those cheesy things where it was like, all right, dude, I just want to ask you how you do this. He immediately like dropped character and was like, yeah, it took me this long to make this and that. But then like, people would walk by and he'd be like, I'm hunting Bigfoot. Hey, I'm from the year, da, da, da. And I was just like, oh my God, dude, this guy's wild. So yeah, it was just a whole scene. It was really a lot of fun.
You were like a cultural anthropologist.
Yeah, you did it with the flat earthers. Now it's time to embed yourself with the Bigfooters.
Right.
Yeah. It was cool. It was weird. It's funny, like, I don't know how to explain it, but like there was people who were experts, like I said, Paul Bartholomew, Kenny Iron, they had like their own little area at the thing. And I know some of them, but it's like, I always feel weird, like talking. It's like, because there's people who want to talk to them and tell them their story or find out about Bigfoot. And I'm just kind of like hanging out like the guy from work, Yeah. It's like, honest, I don't want to
shop.
Yeah. So yeah, a good event. I'll be back next year. It's the Whitehall Sasquatch Festival and Calling Contest. And yeah, I was a judge for the Sasquatch calling contest, which is pretty weird and amazing. The strangest part, I wrote about this for Coast to Coast. So like the lady who ran the event was very busy, obviously. This is a massive undertaking. And so Paul Bartholomew had mentioned that they wanted him to be a judge a few years ago. And he was like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. So I was like, well, shit, if I'm going, it would be cool to do that. Just to say I did it. So I contacted him. He's like, yeah, they definitely could use you as a judge. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to judge now. But like, I never heard from anyone who ran the event. So I'm just kind of like there hanging out and finally found the lady who runs the event. And I'm like, am I a judge or not? Like, I never really, do you need me to do anything? Like, what time do I even have to show up at the calling contest? Yada, yada. So that's when they were like, oh yeah, you're definitely the judge. One of the 5 judges. The whole thing is run sight unseen. So you can't watch the Bigfoot callers. So like, as anyone who saw my pictures of the event and shit, there were like a few hundred people up there to watch the contest. And like, there was between the kids participating and the adults, there was like 60 people doing Sasquatch calls. But me and the other judges, we had to like stand on the stage and then turn our back to all of this and just listen to these Sasquatch calls, which sounds, I don't know, maybe that sounds easy to some people, but it is really fucking hard. It is really, because you're just like, you can't distinguish, but like, you don't know necessarily what's going on. It's so disorienting. And you just hear like, and then you're like, okay, what was that? And as you're kind of like thinking about it, all of a sudden you hear like, and you're like, what? Are they going in the next
like a scorecard?
Yeah, I had a whole scorecard and everything. Okay. But the guy who ran it.
Did anybody do any Sierra sounds? Did you get the Sierra sounds on there?
I think the guy who won. Oh, no. I don't know if they did that one, but yeah, there was a guy who like kind of mimicked like actual Bigfoot. He ended up winning the whole thing. But it was so disorienting. and you can't see, like I said, you can't see people coming and going from this dig. So the guy running, first it was the kids, then the adults. So the guy running the kids one, he just went so fast. And we finally were like, dude, slow down. We can't keep up with these people doing their Bigfoot calls. So it was an experience. It was really unlike anything I've ever experienced in my life. It was just so weird and just bizarre. And like, after a while, they all start to sound the same. You're like, oh, all right, well, that was okay. That was I guess a medium shriek. Like that was kind of like, all right, I'll give you a 5. I mean, I don't know, but then like there were a couple, like 2 or 3 or 4 would like stand out. Where you're like, Jesus, was that a person? Like, what was that? And I'll tell you this story, this part. Like it was almost controversial in a way. Like the thing really came down to 2 people. Okay, it came down to 2 people, and I didn't know this at the time because I couldn't see any of this. There was a woman, and she was like decked out in like a whole elaborate Poison Ivy costume, like the cartoon character. Like I think it was Poison Ivy, but it was a costume. And her thing was like stomping around on the stage and then I've seen the video now, so now I know more about what happened. So her thing was like she would get right up on the back of the judges and fucking scream. Like I could feel, right now still I can like feel that, like that feeling of like someone right behind me fucking screaming. And it was like, it came down and it was just like, what the fuck? And it was 5 of us, we're all standing in line and we're all just kind of like, when it was over, we were just kind of like, oh, jeez. I'm like, was she right up on you? And they were all like, yeah, I felt like she was like right there. And like we watched the video later, and she's like coming right up on the back of the judges, like screaming in our ears and shit. So it really came down to like her and like a more normal Bigfoot guy. And it was like really, we were kind of really on the fence. And it was like, she gets a lot of style points, but she was kind of playing to the judges. And it wasn't really quite a Bigfoot call, it was just more her screaming in our ears, like a foot away. So eventually the other guy won. She came in second, but that was like the weirdest part of that whole run.
Okay, you're a certified Bigfoot calling judge, Tim. So my question is, Bigfoot's not real. Mm-hmm. So what?
Possibly not real.
He's a ghost and or fairy. We all know that.
So Fae folk, yeah.
How do you? Sorry, Fae. He's of the Fae. I don't know. I'll ask Cutchin when I see him on what the proper terminology is, and then use the wrong one. But how does one determine what a Bigfoot call should sound like? Because we did a supernatural Bigfoot episode of Saucer Life. Sam and I went down to the Michigan Bigfoot conference in July, and the Saucer wife and I watched way too many episodes of Finding Bigfoot to sort of acclimatize me.
Why did you do that to yourself, Aaron? Honestly,
because it was easier than doing the kind of research I do for a regular episode. It's like, oh, $50 to go to a Bigfoot conference. I'll do that. And Sam knows all about Bigfoot, and I know like there's a thing called Bigfoot, but I don't know. So they got the guy Bobo on the show who always does these Bigfoot calls. And so on the episode of The Saucer Life, the Saucer wife did a Bigfoot call at the beginning of it because she did not want to go to the conference because Bobo, the Bigfoot caller, was not going to be there. Somebody else from the show was, and she was like, I'm out. So
we need to get Bobo at Strange Realities next year. Is that what
Bobo?
you're saying?
Bobo's a trip. You really should.
He's a character, yeah.
There's an old episode of Finding Bigfoot where the very flesh and blood Bigfoot team teams up with a group of supernatural Bigfoot hunters, including an impossibly young Greg and Dana Newkirk.
Oh wow!
So it's really, really fun. It's a really fun episode. But Tim, at your Bigfoot conference, was there somebody, a woman there selling Bigfoot field casting kits?
Maybe.
Because there was at the Michigan one. And what jumped out to me and Sam was that there was a cardboard stand-up of her in front of her table where she was wearing a skin-tight camouflage sort of bodysuit thing.
Okay, no, that wasn't her then. All right.
And it was inappropriately snug and detail revealing in some places where it oughtn't have been. And we sort of laughed as we walked by, and then we realized, oh God, she's the one sitting at that table.
Oh no.
And she heard us say something not very complimentary.
Oh no.
I can't go back there, guys.
By the way, Aaron, I did want to know if you at Strange Realities were going to let people choose what your presentation was going to be.
What's that mean?
The lady that was at the conference.
So at the Bigfoot conference, one of the speakers, and I got a comment on the website that we were horribly mean to this woman, and I was like, we were so nice compared to what we could have been. There was a speaker who she was on the schedule, so she wasn't like a last minute replacement, and she asked she said, oh, I've got like 20 different presentations I can do. What do you guys want to hear? And she like ran through a bunch of topics, and the whole crowd voted for I think like weird humanoids of the Great Lakes, or like reptile humanoids. And she was like, okay. And so she's going through a flash drive and she can't find that. She can't, I don't have that slideshow. What was the next choice? Next one. She doesn't have that. So then she does like something else. And we're like sitting here like, so basically you're doing the talk that 3/4 of us were excited to hear something other than it was.
Oh my God, that's classic. That's like Spinal Tap.
It was one of those things where you're just like, oh my gosh, this is, how do you even walk in to, oh my God, she's probably watching this. I don't care. But it was just, I mean, as a speaker, I would like, if you're confident enough that you can pick one of a dozen topics, or have somebody pick one of a dozen topics to speak on, and you feel confident enough to speak on that, you're wrong. And you shouldn't be that confident. And you probably suck because you're underprepared, and or you've done it 1,000 times and everybody knows you don't care. So, it was a very Mystery Science Theater 3000 sort of experience watching this presentation with my little silhouette robot head, sort of not being able to say the comments I wanted to say during this thing. But no, my topic was thought out literally 6 months ago, and will be immaculately prepared because I'm a professional.
Oh man.
But thank you for that callback. That was yes.
Yeah, that was my favorite part of that episode when you guys were talking about that. I was like, man, don't let me get somebody like that ever. Like, speaking one of mine. So, Tim, was there anything else that you wanted to say about the Whitehall?
No. I think Aaron was going to ask me what I look for in a proper Bigfoot call. So
yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yes.
Sort of like length of Yelp. Like how there was one little kid that went on for like 2 minutes somehow. It was like, how did he even do that?
That's some lungs.
Yeah. So that, and like loudness, that, and sort of like believability. Like, could I believe that would be a Bigfoot, or is that just like a loud thing? So that was kind of my main criteria. But they all, like I said, it's not like a slam on the like a Bigfoot call. They all kind of sound the same after you've heard like 60 of them. It's like, all right, you're. And there was Jack Brewer. I was talking about it with Jack Brewer in a group chat we're in, and he was like, was there anyone that was just like, here Bigfoot, and there was one person who did the joke. I think that's like a rule. Like 1 year, everybody, one person every year has to do the joke. So like one like lady came up and she was like, here Bigfoot, come here Bigfoot.
I would have given them the win.
Yeah.
They did the whole like. Like you're calling a cat.
Yeah. It was like all that. So it was like, all right, points for like one of the things was like creativity. It was like, all right, she gets a 9 for creativity. That was really good.
It's like cute little kids should win everything, right? You know, if like Star Trek reference, Star Trek Generations, the movie was premiering in 1994. Me and my roommate in college went, and there was a costume contest beforehand.
Oh, wow.
And you know, the winner by audience applause, you know, was the little 5-year-old kid dressed as Captain Kirk, because come on. And man, there was this like gentleman who was too old to be dressing up in a Star Trek uniform in public, who we had previously seen sort of unsuccessfully hitting on the Walden Books clerk in his Star Trek uniform, who was clearly very angry that this little boy whose uniform was not correct won. And it was the second greatest thing I've ever seen, besides that episode of Finding Bigfoot where Bobo did the one call that was pretty successful.
What was he dressed up like a Cardassian or something?
No, he was dressed up in like a Next Generation uniform. And come on, I mean, I'm a Next Generation guy, but you're not going to beat Captain Kirk. You're just not.
Well, two things. First, I credited Aaron. I really did mean this. The Aaron and your buddy, your friend there, who when you guys went to that thing, the Bigfoot thing, that really did inspire me.
Oh wow, good.
When I saw you guys went to that, it was like maybe a month before I went to the Lake Champlain event, and I said to myself, I'm like, that's really fucking cool. I'm like, there's got to be like an event around here that I can drive to, like a conference around here that I can go to and check out like what they did, because that's, you know, there are events locally, and that's when I found the Lake Champlain thing. So that kind of led me to to the Bigfoot calling contest. But that was totally like, I know I said like inspired by, I think he thought I was giving you shit or whatever, but that was genuinely true. It was
Thank you.
When I saw you guys went there, I'm like, that is so cool. I want to go to one of these things and check it out. So, and the other thing is they're expanding the original Star Trek set museum to now include also they have a whole warehouse that they haven't that they're working in right now. That's going to have all the sets for Next Generation. Yes. So when they open that up, it might be like another year or two from now, but when they do, we got to organize something. We'll do like an impromptu hangout. Like we'll get Jason off at you.
It is such
we'll go to Ticonderoga, and
it is such an easy drive to Ticonderoga for me if I'm allowed into Canada. Once
not in Canada, why do you have to cross over or something?
It's so much faster to go through Canada from where I am, because I'm like a straight shot 2 hours from the border, and it's just like straight across.
Yeah, the United States just needs to take that over. Like we need to just.
Well, we tried.
Yeah.
Didn't go well.
You can thank William Henry Harrison or whoever for that.
Hey,
right?
Hey, as a native Hoosier, I will not hear a word against William Henry Harrison. Although Tecumseh was pretty cool too. So.
Well, I mean, you know, the only president that caught a cold and then died a month later. I mean, you know, that's a distinction.
There you go. When they have the grand unveiling, we don't want to go that weekend because you don't even want to know who's going to be there that weekend.
It's going to be people like me. I don't want to see them.
You know what's funny is the weekend I was there for the Bigfoot calling contest just happened to be Trek Days in Ticonderoga, and George Takei was there. And
I saw that. Yeah.
All kinds of people. And it was so weird because when I went, it was like there was no one there. It was just like a ghost town. And it was like me on the tour by myself with two young ladies who were super Star Trek fans, who were the tour guides.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm watching it on the. Weirdly enough, I get back to the hotel from the Bigfoot calling contest. I turn on the news, local news, and they're like, everyone was flocking to Ticonderoga today for Trek Days, and I'm like, what the fuck? This is so bizarre.
Man, you dodged a damn bullet there. You don't
I know. And and it was like just packed. The place was like packed.
Not good. Not good.
So, yeah, but when they launch the Next Generation, we'll wait like a few weeks or months or whatever.
Gotta go.
I would definitely do an excursion back there.
Field trip.
So much fun.
That's right.
Field trip. All right, guys, this has been really cool. Thank you for doing this tonight.
No problem.
And thank you for being a part of this and part of Strange Realities Conference 2021 coming up October 15th to the 17th. Tim, let's start with you. Tell people where they can find you and all the awesome stuff that you do.
Mostly nowadays, Coast to Coast AM. I've really been lazy this year for podcasting. So, Coast2TO, coastam.com. That's where I write, obviously, for the mothership, Coast to Coast AM. And if I can ever stop being lazy, we'll get the podcast up and running again. I got a ton of people I want to talk to and stuff. It's just, I think I've talked about this on the show before, where it's like, you just got to get the ball rolling and book like a couple of people. And then once you get like the first couple of weeks booked, then it's like, all right, now I can start plugging people in. But right now I'm just like, I'm like super lazy. And I think once I wrap up the Strange Realities conference, then maybe the holiday season, I'll start kind of like booking guests and doing shows, and we'll see where it goes from there. But yeah, that's been all of America. Plenty of old shows to check it out if you want that.
So I got a question here that's asking about whether we'll put this up as a video podcast. We're actually going to put this up as an audio. We'll put this up as an audio podcast on the main feed.
Oh,
yeah,
so that will be on Spotify. But
that's
all three of these segments will be put together as one episode.
And we are the Conspiranormal Podcast. You should check us out if you're new to us. Welcome.
And Aaron, what's where can people find Saucer Life and find your books and all that?
Yeah, you can go to saucerlife.com and find all the episodes of the Saucer Life and all the links to all the and we're Saucer Life on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of that, and then GreatLakesLore.com. You can find all that and Great Lakes Lore on Twitter, Instagram, and Saucer Life. So the whole empire is out there. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes.
Well, we look forward to seeing you guys in the flesh.
In the flash.
Can't wait.
Yeah, next time we're all hanging out and chatting, we'll all be in the same room. It'll be awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Yeah, guys, it's gonna be awesome. Thank you.
I can't wait to get to Nashville, man. It's
yeah.
Haven't been there in years, man.
What's that?
Awesome.
Haven't been there in years, so
Yeah.
looking forward to it.
And it's a certain like I think everybody can empathize too, where it's just like I've been cooped up for like a year and a half. Like I've done these regional trips, which are awesome and fun, and it's nice to like go to a small town like Ticonderoga and stay for the weekend, or a small town like Rutland. But like we're going to fucking Nashville, baby. This is going to be awesome.
Music City.
Yeah.
And
Broadway is calling.
Is there a field trip to the Flying Saucer?
Yeah, we can go to the Flying Saucer.
We got to go to the Flying Saucer.
Not too far at all.
I've been to the one in Nashville. I've been to the one in Memphis. So
I'm totally down.
Looking to get back.
So but no, we're gonna when the conference is over, I'm taking you up to Adams. We'll go to the cave is closed. I heard Heather Mosher told us last week.
Oh no. Well, we'll look into it. We'll figure out something.
But there's other things to see up there, so that are of interest. So
we'll figure it out.
All right. Thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.
And we will for the people on the audio, we will be back to close out the show. But thank you all for listening tonight. And remember, strangerealitiesconference.com. You can get tickets over there. That is $70 for in person if you would like to show up at SIR Nashville. And $30. And what we're really pushing is the $30 online tickets for everybody to come view the conference and see these guys either at SIR Nashville or in their own homes giving these presentations. So that's it, guys, and we will talk to you soon.
All right. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, gentlemen.